Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this is day 3 of the Redis Zero to Hero series. In this video, we will be setting up the Java project that we will be using for Redis so that we can start accessing Redis using our Java application. Also, we will be discussing different Redis libraries available in Java language, and we will also discuss which among all those libraries is the best one and how we can use one of those library in our Java application, right? And just a quick reminder, if you have not subscribed yet, I would strongly recommend doing that. In this series, we are going to solve real world problems with Redis step by step, just like it is being done in production. So without wasting time, let's get started. So let's discuss the Redis libraries available in Java. So there are three famous Java libraries available for Redis: the Jedis, Lettuce and Redisson, right? So you will be seeing a lot of blogs, articles about Jedis, but they could be relatively old. Don't use, it's not thread safe and also not scalable, right? Now the remaining ones are the Lettuce and Redisson. So before discussing Lettuce and Redisson, I will just show you the GitHub page for both the repositories so that you can have better understanding and better clarity which among these two is more popularly being used in applications. So let's see the GitHub pages. So this is the Lettuce GitHub repository. I will mention this link in the description so you can refer to that later. So if you see the Lettuce, so the stars is 5.7k stars, right? And it has the documentation. So if you scroll down, you just need to add the dependency as Lettuce core, right? And with this dependency, all the Redis APIs would be available in your Java application, right? You can start using that. So the code snippets are also being shown over here. For example, the basic usage, the asynchronous APIs, it also supports the reactive APIs and a lot of other features as well, right? So on the other hand, if you see the Redisson documentation GitHub repository, so it has 24.2k stars. So obviously this is more popularly being used in production applications, right? So if you see the documentation is also very great for Redisson. So it has a lot of extensive documentation and lot of cool features, means it provides the data structures similar to the data structures available in our Java language. Now let's discuss the main differences between both these libraries, right? So Lettuce and Redisson. Let's discuss Lettuce first. Lettuce is scalable and also supports reactive streams, as we have already seen in the documentation. It also works very well with the Spring Data Redis. Actually, it is the default when you add dependency of Spring Data Redis. So, but it doesn't works very well with the Spring Data Reactive Redis. Although it provides the reactive API functionality, the library itself supports the reactive APIs, but the Spring Data Reactive Redis doesn't support this library, right? Now the third point is it has very low level APIs compared to Redisson. I will come to this point once we discuss the Redisson. So let's discuss Redisson. Redisson is also scalable and also supports reactive streams. It works very well with the Spring Data Redis and Spring Data Reactive Redis. So it provides lot of cool features, awesome documentation and it brilliant abstraction. So with these, what I mean is so if you see the Redisson, it provides the exact same data structures what we developers are already familiar with. For example, in Java we have the list, set, hash map. So similar kind of data structures Redisson also provides, right? So it looks like we are implementing the core Java data structures. So for developer, the learning curve is not much. So it feels like we are using the exact same data structures and same APIs as we are already familiar with. On the other hand, Lettuce we need to learn more APIs for the Lettuce library. That how we can call this method means we need to know the low level APIs. So that is what I mean by this definition. So in this series as well, we will explore Redisson from scratch, and we will build many projects based on Redisson, right? So let's discuss further. So next, what we need to do is we need to set up the project, how we can use the Java library. So we would explore Redisson library in this series. Complete series would be on based on Redisson, right? So let's quickly set up the project so that from our Java application, we can start using Redis and we can start invoking any commands onto the Redis. Let's see how we can do that. Now for this, what I will do is I would need to create the Java application project in our IntelliJ IDE. You can use any IDE, but for me, I'm much more familiar with the IntelliJ, so I'm using that. But you can use any IDE, whatever you are very familiar with. So what I will do is I'll just create one project, right? So let's open the IDE. I'm opening that, right? So what I'll do is I'll just create one project. Let's name this as Redis hands-on, right? So as of now, I'm using the Java 17, right? The group ID is same, right? Redis hands-on is the artifact ID. Let's click on create, and if you see, the Java project is being created. So this is the simple Maven Java project. It has the source, it has main Java, it has test Java, so and the pom.xml. So this is the simplest Maven Java project what we have created. Now to access the Redis, we need to add few dependencies, right? Now let's discuss what all dependencies we need to add, right? So let's go through the documentation again. Let's go to the GitHub repository. If you click on quick start, right? So if you click on this, so there are two Redisson versions, right? One is the Pro and the other one is the Community Edition. So we would be using the Community Edition for our learning purpose, right? So let's include this dependency in our project, right? So I'll just add this dependency in our project. Now with this dependency, we can start using the Redis, but for ease of use of our project and for running some tests, so I will include few more dependencies. So for ease of use, so that I don't need to write the boilerplate code again and again, what I will do is I will just add the Lombok dependency. So let's add that as well, right? So what I will do is I'll just add the Lombok dependency, right? And then I will add one more dependency, is the JUnit dependency, so that I can start so that I can execute some JUnit test cases, right? Because we would be performing some test cases by accessing the Redis, right? So these dependencies are enough. Now I will add one more plugin so that I can compile and I can execute the code using the Maven command. So I will add the Maven compiler plugin for that. So, right. So what we need to do is we just need to copy this build tag and just need to add it, right? Now our project is ready, right? Now our project setup is completely ready. Now we can start performing some tests and start exploring the Redisson APIs. Now what I need to do is, what I will do as a starting point, we will learn core data structures first before building the project, right? So what I will do for that, I will execute JUnit test cases for that. When I say JUnit test cases, means we will learn the core data structures by running the tests on the Redis, right? So what I will do is I will create one configuration class. Let's say the Redisson config is the class, right? Now here this class would provide me the configuration for accessing the Redis, right? For example, the connection means similar to what JDBC has, right? For connecting to the database, we have the JDBC configuration. So similar to that, I have just created the Redisson configuration for getting all the configuration related to the Redis. So I will just create one package so that we can move this in move this class in some package instead of the default package com.suhail.redisson.test. let's say this is the package and I can move this, right? So I will create the configuration here, right? Now before creating the configuration, I would like to tell you the basic stuff, how we can connect with the Redis, right? So let's discuss that part. So for example, this is the Redis server, right? This is the Redis server and this is our Java application. Now in any kind of client server application, the client here is the Java application. The client has to know where actually the server is hosted. So client has to know the IP of this Redis server and on which port this Redis server is running, so that it can make a connection to this Redis server. So similar to that, on the basis of these terms, the Redisson developers has exposed this configuration. So what Redisson has provided is, Redisson has one config class. So this config class is where we need to mention all the configuration. Now what kind of configuration? So there could be different cases. So it could be like we have a standalone Redis server, or we could be running Redis in a cluster. So when we are running Redis as a standalone server, so it is a single instance of the Redis server. So for that, the config class has the single server as the attribute, and in single server it has the address attribute. So in this address we need to mention the IP and port on which our Redis server is running. Now if we are running the Redis in a cluster mode, so in a cluster mode we have a master slave configuration, right? Now the master slave configuration, for example, in this setup there could be one master and two slave. So there are three nodes in this setup, one node as a master and the two nodes are the slave. So for this, the master slave configuration is there, where we can provide the master address and the list of slave address. Now for sending or invoking the commands to the Redis, what Redisson has provided, Redisson has provided the client, so that it is very easy to invoke or send a command to the Redis. Now with this configuration, what we need to do is we need to just pass into this method redisson.create and we get a client. Now with this client we can send any command onto the Redis. Now we would test this in our Java application. Let's make these changes in the Java code for this. Now what we'll do is, I will just create the Redisson client, right? I just need to create the Redisson client, right? So okay, because it's a new project, so what I will do is I will just reload it, right? I will just reload the project, right, so that the APIs are available. Sometimes it's not available, so what I will do is I will just quickly restart my IntelliJ, right, so that the suggestions are available right away, right? So what I will do is, now if you see the Redisson client, now the suggestions are available and we can easily import it. So the Redisson client is there, right? Now what I will do is I will try to some kind of define the getter method, because this is the configuration class which we would be using internally for our application, right? So with this I can get the client, for example Redisson client, and I can provide the get Redisson client, right? So I'll do some kind of singleton, because this client should be single instance, it should not be created each and every time, right? So for this, what I will do is, if Redisson client is null, what I will do here is, as I mentioned, we need to just create the config class, right? Config, new config, right? So this config is created. Now with this config we have the, if you see, we have the different configuration: use single server, master slave server, cluster server, replicated server. So there are a lot of features we can use in Redisson, right? So at this moment we have a single Redis instance running in our local laptop, so we can use the single server, right? So with this single server, what I mentioned, it has the address. So address we need to pass. So what address we need to pass? We need to pass the address similar to what we use in JDBC. For example, for Redis, for making connection to Redis, we have the Redis. So this is the standard which we need to follow, 127, right? .0.1 and the port is 6378. So with this we are good, right? Now we have just provided the configuration. Now we just need to create the client. What we need to do is Redisson dot create config. Just we need to pass this and our Redisson client is ready, right? Now our Redisson client is ready. Now we can use this Redisson client and invoke or send any command to the Redis. Now let's do this test. Let's create one base test class, right? So that when we will create our test classes, so that for every test class, if we want to set the client first and then we shut down the client on once over all the test cases, so base test would be doing all those activity, right? So what we'll do is I will just Redisson config. So here it will just create that and protected. I just do that Redisson client, right? Now before all the test cases running, so I'll just call this set client ID, right? So I'll just call this, right, set client ID, and it should run before all the, okay. Why this is complaining? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just add test instance per class. All right, so this error is gone, right? So what I'll need to do is Redisson client. So before each and every test class is getting run, so I'll just set the client ID, and then I just need to do the shutdown, right? So Redisson dot shutdown, client dot shutdown. Now our base test class is ready. Now what I need to do is let's perform some key value test. For example, storing the key value in Redisson. Let's do that quickly, right? So I'll just key value test, right? So it has to extend the base test class. Let's call this as public void key value test, right? And let's put the test annotation on top of it, right? So what we need to is, let's call, now if you see the Redisson client, so if you see the Redisson client has get list, right, get set, right? So if you see get set, get map, so it has lot of data structures which are similar to the data structures which we already are familiar with, whatever available in Java. So for simple key value pair, what we can do is get bucket. Bucket is nothing, it is just a object holder where we can pass the key value pair which needs to be stored into the Redis. So it is nothing, just a object holder. So what we need to pass, get bucket, here we need to pass the key. Now for simplicity, let's say we need to pass the student colon 1 colon name. Let's say this is the key which we need to pass. All right, now let's do this control option V. Let's assign this to local variable, right? This is bucket. Now when I do bucket dot set Suhail, right, so it internally what it does is it call this set key v. This command, it would be invoked internally, right? So it would be doing that. So if you go to this code as well, right, so Redisson bucket, so if you see, so set async, so if you see over here, right, write async, and I'll just so if you see over here, it is running the Redis command as set command. So it has all the commands like set command, then we have different commands, so it is actually internally running the set command, right? So let's quickly run that, right? So it is actually running the set command. Now when I do bucket dot get, right, so what it will do is it will run the get command, right? So let's give this as value. You can change this to string, because you will say that everything is stored in string format in Redis. Yes, so we can change this to a string. Now we can simply print out the value, right, value from Redis, let's say this, right? So if we can do this, if we can run this, right, if we can run this, then okay, then we can see what is actually running. So if you see, this value is getting fetched from Redis, right? So let's verify from the Redis server, right? So let's see, docker ps-a, my Redis server is running. So if you are not aware how to set up the Docker Redis in your laptop, so you can refer to the day 2 for Redis Zero to Hero series, where we have gone through the complete Redis setup on the local machine, right? So what I'll do is docker exec -it redis bash redis cli. Just need to type this, right? And I just need to do the get student :1 name, right? So if you see over here, there are some weird characters also along with the value, right? Why it is so? So this is because we are not using any serializer format in Java application, right? So as you know that whenever we are transmitting or transferring data via network to any other application, to any other server, we need to use the serializer or deserializer format. Otherwise there could be some junk characters appear. So similar in this case as well, because we are not using any serializer or deserializer, so that is why it is showing like that, right? So we need to use the serializer or deserializer to fix that. So let's see the documentation for again, refer to the documentation again. So if you see the documentation, right? So if you see the documentation, let me just a second. So if you see the serialization, right? So there are a lot of serializers available in Redisson. So if you see, if you want to pass the byte array, you can use this serializer. If you want to store the long value, you can use this serializer. Now in our case, we want to store a string value, so we can use this string codec serializer. Now the other way, if you want to use if you want to store Java object in JSON format, right, you can use this JSON Jackson codec. So if you're using gRPC protobuf protocol, you can use the protobuf codec. So these many serializers are already available in Redisson, but if you talk about lettuce, these all serializers are not available in lettuce. So at the end you would be creating your own custom serializer if you are using lettuce. But Redisson has lot of capabilities, lot of serializers already inbuilt, right? So we can use the same serializer. So how we can use that? Just we need to pass the string codec dot instance, right? So if we use this way, now let's run this again, right? Let's run this again, and let's verify from the server again, right? So let's say the get command, right? So if you see over here, now there are no weird characters, right? Now there are no weird characters and our value is absolutely fine. Now let's run few more tests, one more test actually, right? For example, you on book my show, right? So there are seats available for any show, right? So on every show there are limited number of seats, right? So there could be multiple instances which continuously booking the seats. So some kind of increment or decrement operation is being happening, right? So similar test what we need to perform, right? For example, let's say the number test, right? So what I will do is I'll just extend this base test, and I'll just do public void number test. And what I will do is I just need to perform the increment or decrement functionality. So for this, what I can use this dot Redisson client dot get, I can use atomic long, right? So if you see, it has the similar data structures available in Java. So what we can do is, for example, I can use show one seeds, right? So let's assume this key is already available in Redis for the show ID 1 and the seats, how many seats are available, that would be the value. Let's assign this value to a local variable, right? So this is atomic long, right? Now let's say long value is equal to, I want to increment it. So if you see, it is the APIs are also same, the increment and get method. So developers are much familiar with this kind of APIs. Now let's print this, right? For example, the seats value is let's say this seeds value is, and let's say I just want to print the value, right? So let's quickly verify first whether we have the get what is the key show one seeds, whether we have this key or not. We don't have any key with this name, so what I will do is set show colon 1 seeds. Let's say 120 is the seeds, right? And let's say the payment gets failed, and at the end, at the rollback, the seats which was on hold, it has been released. So let's say this increment functionality is being invoked on top of that, right? So let's run this, and if you run this, the value is 121, right? So let's verify from this Redis, right? So it is 121. So for this you already have the decrement, right? Decrement and get. So if you want to run this decrement and get, you can run this as, again the value would be populated as 120. Let's run one more time, and you would see the value is populated as 119. So that was all I had planned for today. So if this video helped you, hit like, subscribe for the Redis series, share it across the team, and drop a comment with your questions or use cases. So I'll see you in the next video, and in the next video we will discuss more commands, more data structures. We'll dig more deeper into the Redis. So see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.